Coming up tonight, you'll see how Arizona's famous fiesta has come and gone.
And you might be seeing a lot more Pizza Hut coming this fall.
One of America's most loved producers has been accused of a crime. Find out who and for what right now.
Welcome to Cronkite Rundown. I'm Pat Poblete.
And I'm Victoria Valenzuela. Thank you for joining us. The Oscars are airing this Sunday on ABC. Ryan Seacrest is still planning to be a main interviewer on the red carpet. Our reporter, Alicia Longo, has more on why this might be a little awkward.
Thanks, Victoria, and you're right. Ryan Seacrest is still set to host E! Network's red carpet coverage, even after being accused of sexual assault. The producer's former stylist, Susie Hardy, claimed that Seacrest had assaulted her from 2007 to 2013. Hardy's attorney sent a letter back in November to NBC Universal, E! and Seacrest himself, demanding sexual misconduct stop in the workplace. Investigators say there is not enough evidence to support these allegations. Valley high schools are monitoring potential threat situations in the 2 weeks following the Parkland, Florida mass shooting. The Arizona Republic reported 16 threat incidents at Arizona schools since February 15th. Many of the threats were found on social media platforms. There have been no injuries, but police have arrested several people, including minors.
It's now time to introduce The Other Side, a new political segment from Cronkite Rundown. This week, the political world is examining gun control, following the days of lobbying ignited by the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School mass shooting, where 17 students and faculty lost their lives. In the wake of the tragedy, the community surrounding the school responded by rallying in Parkland, Florida. They even took to Washington, D.C. to lobby state and national policymakers for tougher restrictions on guns. Their message seems to have gotten through to lawmakers in Washington. A wide range of solutions have been discussed, including comprehensive background checks, thorough screens for mental illness, and arming teachers. The proposal examined tonight is the bill introduced in the Senate on Wednesday. The bill would raise the minimum age to purchase an assault weapon and high-capacity magazines from 18 to 21. The bipartisan legislation was proposed by Republican Jeff Flake, the junior senator from right here in Arizona, and Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat from California, who made the following comments in a press release. Under current law, licensed gun dealers cannot sell a handgun to anyone under the age of 21, but they are allowed to sell assault rifles like the AR-15 to anyone over 18. This policy is dangerous and makes absolutely no sense. If you can't buy a beer, you shouldn't be able to buy a weapon of war. Policies which limit assault weapons such as this one are gaining support amongst Democratic lawmakers. This week, the House of Representatives also introduced a measure to ban assault weapons outright. A similar policy was discussed a decade ago. However, Democratic support has more than doubled since that time. On the other side, however, policies to limit assault weapons have yet to gain traction.
We shouldn't be banning guns for law-abiding citizens. We should be focusing on making sure that citizens who should not get guns in the first place don't get those guns. And that is why we see a big breakdown in the system here.
As people are contemplating new laws, I think the most important thing we can look at is, what about all the laws that are already on the books that were not enforced, that were not properly implemented?
That was Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, followed by Majority House Whip Steve Scalise, who wanted to add important context to the discussion. Both the FBI and the Broward County Sheriff's Department received warnings about the Parkland shooter. If the system had operated as intended, he would have never been allowed to legally purchase a gun. There are also questions about the efficacy of a ban or an age limit adjustment. David French, senior writer at the conservative publication The National Review, points out that a ban would do nothing about the number of assault weapons that have already flooded the country's homes, streets, and black markets. He writes that any measure that preserves the ability of criminals to access guns while restricting the access of law-abiding Americans is a measure that fundamentally impairs the very purpose of the Second Amendment. For the law-abiding, the existing stock of tens of millions of weapons and magazines would instantly become more expensive. Yet with the slightest premeditation, a criminal could easily circumvent the ban. Now this seems to be the position of many congressional Republicans, but some consider it a flawed interpretation of the Second Amendment. In 2008, the Supreme Court struck down Washington, D.C.'s handgun ban and strict shotgun and rifle regulations. But in his opinion, conservative Justice Antonin Scalia wrote that nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. This brings us to today, where we know the restrictions on gun sales are permissible under the Second Amendment. We know that there are growing calls for such restrictions, and there's a strong gun lobby fighting those restrictions on behalf of its constituents. We also know that tragic mass shootings pepper our country's recent history in locations like Las Vegas, Orlando, Sandy Hook, and Columbine, and policy-wise, not much has changed. Perhaps gun control advocates should no longer look to our lawmakers to enact change. This week, we are given a glimpse of a different route to gun control, the private sector. Dick's Sporting Goods, one of the largest firearm retailers in the country, announced on Wednesday that they will not sell AR-15 rifles and will end the sale of firearms to buyers under the age of 21. Walmart quickly followed suit, as did Kroger on Thursday morning. Perhaps this is the way forward for those who want to see gun control. This is such a divisive issue that there may never be a proposal which satisfies both political parties enough for it to become law. As columnist Jonah Goldberg points out, Republicans support gun rights not because they are beholden to the NRA, but because their voters tell them to, just as Democratic voters on the other side tell their representatives the opposite. With politicians locked in a perpetual fight, it may fall upon those outside of elected office to make change to stem the tide of mass shootings. Thank you very much for joining me on the other side. I'm Pat Poblete.
The Arizona State Motor Vehicle Division plans on offering online permit testing for teenagers. The Department of Transportation announced Wednesday that a parent or guardian can sign up their teen for this online test if they so choose to do this option. This change will hopefully reduce wait time at the DMV. The test will stay at the same price of $7, and teens have 3 attempts to pass within 12 months of taking it. A parent or guardian must proctor the test. Tucson's 93rd annual Fiesta de los Vaqueros took place this month. A long-standing tradition, much of Tucson closes down for up to 2 days to let businesses sponsor events and to let students get a taste of the Old West. Wilson K-8 teacher Natasha Benalis says the rodeo break is an important part of being a Tucsonian.
So yeah, I think it's a big part of our culture just to really instill that in our children and kind of go back into the past and see kind of where Arizona started.
While closing down for a rodeo may seem odd to those not from Tucson, the rodeo circuit is a big deal. Competitors spend their entire lives training to compete professionally, like 8-time Bullfighter of the Year, Dusty Tuckness.
I've been fighting bulls since I was about 12 years old. I grew up into the rodeo industry. My dad fought bulls and my mom was involved in rodeo, and just really looked their direction one day as a young kid and really never looked back.
The hope of the Tucson Rodeo is that this 4-day blast from the past will keep Tucson history alive and well in the kids of the city for the foreseeable future.
Now, Las Vegas requires some extreme manpower to keep everything functioning. Unfortunately, that's changing. Our reporter Taniyah Williamson can explain.
Thanks, Pat. In a recent study from the University of Redlands, Las Vegas is ranked as the highest U.S. city to lose jobs to automation. The study predicts that in 20 years, 65% of the city's jobs will be automated. Office and administrative support, food preparation and serving, and sales-related jobs around the country will be changed forever. Pizza Hut has been named the new sponsor of the NFL. The news came a day after Papa John's announced they're ending their 8-year sponsorship with the league. According to ESPN, Papa John and the NFL will focus their business relationship on the partnership of 22 local NFL teams. This new arrangement was a mutual decision.
Home and away on Cronkite Rundown Sports.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Home and Away. I'm Arturo alongside our guest today, Nate Gabler. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Art.
Our pleasure. And today's subject is going to be NFL free agency. We're going to take a little hiatus on this show, so we're going to talk about that right now. And in terms of NFL free agency, the talk is Kirk Cousins, of course. Now, here at home, Arizona is one of the teams in play. Give us your take on if Arizona has a shot, and especially on Kirk Cousins.
Kirk's an interesting case, Art. We've really never seen a quarterback in the prime of his career completely healthy hit in the open market. He could completely reset the amount of money a quarterback makes every year if he wants to, go ahead and demand $40 million. I don't see him doing that. Kirk's had 3 phenomenal seasons, throwing for 4,000 yards 3 years in a row. Now, he fell off a bit this year, but there's a reason for that. You're looking at a guy that lost 2 1,000-yard receivers from last year. Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon. 11 different offensive linemen he played behind. It's a lot of inconsistency as far as his protections and weapons, and he still threw for 4,000 yards and 27 touchdowns. Sure. I think Kirk's a guy that can push a team over the top. Now, as far as the teams that are in play, you have 2 groups, really. You have a group of teams that can win now. You're looking at Minnesota, Denver. I guess maybe you could throw Arizona in that group.
Maybe.
Then you have a group of teams that can throw as much money at Kirk as they possibly can, like up to $40 million. That's your Cleveland Browns, your New York Jets. The problem with Arizona is they don't really fall into either of those categories. They're a team that has a decent roster that can win football games, but they're not as good as Minnesota and Denver, and they don't have the money that Cleveland and New York does. So I really don't see them being players.
Okay, a lot of food for thought, but getting away from the quarterback and Kirk Cousins, let's talk about just free agency as a whole. Give us a team real quick and a non-QB free agent you think we should look at.
I'm really intrigued by Malcolm Butler. We saw what New England thought about him when they benched him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But for Butler, it was more than just that one game. The Patriots never used him as a true #1 cornerback. Before they got Stephon Gilmore this year, you were looking at Logan Ryan with safety help over the top that would command most of the #1 wide receivers. This year they got Gilmore, and Malcolm Butler played the 2 slot exclusively, and Gilmore would take those 1s. That being said, there's not that many quarterbacks that can take those guys in the league, so I think Malcolm Butler is going to get paid like he is a Patrick Peterson, like he is a Jalen Ramsey.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So that's fair. Now for neutral, we're going to get a little rapid fire session. Hate to put you on the spot, but here we go.
Right.
I'm going to give you a name real quick. Tell us where you think he goes. Case Keenum.
Denver. Okay. I think I see Denver taking a Keenum plus a guy in the draft, maybe a Baker Mayfield.
Okay. How about Kyle Fuller?
He could go anywhere. There's so many teams. There are 50 teams, or 50 teams. There is 9 teams with $50 million in cap room. Got a lot of teams that can throw money at corners. That's why the Malcolm Butler situation is interesting. Same thing with Fuller.
Okay, and last one, Sammy Watkins, a wide receiver.
I think he ends up back in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. They didn't tag him.
The trade for Marcus Peters cleared them up a bunch of money. They don't have to re-sign Tremaine Johnson. I bet he stays in LA.
Okay, there you have it. A lot of wise words from a very wise man. We'll see you next time here at Home and Away. Till then, take care. And as always, see you next time.
Now, for everyone here at Cronkite Rundown, thank you for joining us.
And for more information about our show, visit us at www.cronkiterundown.com. We'll see you next week.